Like,
Okay.
we're going to need cocktails at the next one.
That probably would be helpful.
It really would.
A glass of wine.
Yeah, I think would be a lot more fun.
Hello, pod people. I'm Stacy. I'm a licensed clinical social worker.
Oh. Hi, I'm Heather. I am also a licensed clinical social worker.
So this is our This is our first podcast. So bear with us since we don't really know what we're doing. But the purpose of our show is to talk about real topics and how they affect us and how they affect you, and use a little bit of humor, but also some of the knowledge we have from our field and all of our years of experience to help bring a little bit more of an answer to the question, why do people do that?
Why do people do that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So our first topic is really based off of the idea
election.
that there's an upcoming election, which is bringing about a lot of togetherness and love and kumbaya. Everyone's really happy with each other, and the country really loves each other so much in this election.
Not what I'm seeing.
So what we are seeing, right, is that people hate each other's guts, and we're seeing wives that hate their husbands and think that they're fucking idiots, and we're seeing husbands that hate their wives and thinking that they're fucking idiots, and we're seeing friends that feel like they don't want to talk to or be friends with their friends anymore, and coworkers who dread going to work, and neighbors who throw eggs at each other's houses. Literally, I've experienced the egg throwing, the receiving.
You've been egged
I've been egged
before you moved.
before I moved. Yes.
Part of why you moved.
Part of why I moved. Yes. I've been egged because I, made the drastic mistake in 2020 of letting somebody know who I was voting for. And so here we are, right? So here's our purpose, our challenge, I think, for ourselves and to our viewers, our pod people out there, as Heather likes to call them.
Pod people.
Pod people. Is can we move forward, regardless of what the results of the election are, and be friends with each other, be kind to each other, live next door to each other, be married to each other, and still be kind to and respect each other at the same time, because I'm definitely seeing some problems.
And you're seeing it a lot in your practice.
I see it a lot. So I've been in the field for 28 years. I have been in private practice now for 22 years, and I've owned a group practice for 9 years. And I will say that what I've seen transpire since 2016 is nothing like anything I've ever seen before. Before 2016, I would say it almost never came up that people would talk about politics.
No one spoke about politics. We never spoke about politics.
No.
Like, we look at our friend group, and I would have no idea who anyone was voting for.
Nor did we care.
Felt so far
right?
removed from it. No, nobody cared.
No one gave a shit.
And all of that changed.
Yes. So I think what we want to talk about is why did it change without taking sides? Because even though this seems like a political conversation, it's really not a political conversation, because we're not here to talk about politics in terms of whose policies do we believe in and whose side are we on. We don't want to get into that in this podcast anyway. Maybe in a future podcast we could talk about that, but not today. And so our challenge to ourselves and to our viewers is, to understand what is different today than what might have existed years ago. Why we're so divisive, why we're so divided. The word, I think, is polarized, why we're so polarized. And what can we do? Because we have no control over the politicians and what they're doing. Again, regardless of what side, we have absolutely no control over them, what they say, what they do. All the control we have over who wins is voting, right? And come November 5th, somebody is going to win, and half the country is going to be happy and half the country is going to be miserable, right? So how do we move forward and still be, how do we make America kind again, I guess is the question.
How can you remain friends with someone who's got very different political views?
Okay. So I guess the place to start is in the beginning, right? And the beginning is, what is it that makes somebody who's voting for this guy hate the person who's voting for that guy, right? That is the question. So I think, these are just my thoughts, just based off of my brain and my thoughts and me thinking, and all of the patients I've had over the years and people that I've worked with and families that I've helped. A lot of it has to do with the concept of polarization, right? So what's polarization, right? The definition of polarization is the act with which you become more embedded and more extreme in your beliefs based off of the conversation and the argument and the debate and the defending of that belief. What does that mean? What that means is if hypothetically I was going to be voting for, Kamala Harris and you were going to be voting for Donald Trump, that's not true. I'm just making a hypothetical. If that were happening, right, and I try to convince you that you should be voting for Kamala Harris and you're trying to convince me that I should be voting for Donald Trump, right? What's happening is you are talking about all of the things about your candidate that you believe make him amazing and make him the right person. And
Which furthers my being stuck in that belief system
You're
of thinking I'm correct. And
yeah, you're convincing yourself that you're right? And you're telling me why my candidate is bad, which convinces you even more, not only that you're right about your candidate, but that you're right about my candidate. Your candidate good, my candidate bad, right? Now, while you're talking, I'm not listening to a word you're saying. While you're talking, I am thinking about why I think you're wrong. I'm thinking about the things you're saying that I don't believe are true. And I'm thinking about my rebuttal. And then I have my turn to have my rebuttal, right? Where I am convincing you that my candidate is good, your candidate is bad. All the good things about mine, all the bad things about yours. And now we walk away from this debate having completely failed at convincing the other person that they should change their view. And we have, in the opposite effect, we have convinced ourselves even more that we're right? So I walk out of that debate being even more convinced that Kamala Harris is the right person. You walk out of that debate being even more convinced that Donald Trump is the right person, right? So what have we done?
just had an argument.
Right. So now I walk out of that room and I'm like, oh my God, Heather's such a fucking asshole.
And I think you're an idiot.
And you think I'm a fucking idiot, right? Which is happening a lot. There's a lot of, we hear this constantly. This person's an idiot. This person's a moron, right? You were just telling me earlier about your friend who thinks her husband's an idiot, right?
Yes.
So, where does that leave us, right? So I think it's important to pay attention to that. The other problem is social media.
Yes.
Right? So let's talk for a minute about how social media has had an enormous effect on polarization, right? If we think about what I just said about polarization, what polarization is, and now we look at social media, look at all the opportunity we have all day long to argue with people.
Yes.
Right?
I was arguing with someone the other day and was sending you screenshots as I was getting enraged and really trying to not have an argument, but to educate myself. They had posted something and I'm like, tell me more about this. And I got this very cryptic, more to be revealed statement, which wasn't giving me answers, and then was told, I'm not going to find the answers I'm looking for on that page, which was complete bullshit.
Yeah.
But I think, and
so what do you think was happening to that person? Because he couldn't even answer you.
No.
Right? So what do you think happened to him?
Well, he deleted his post. Which is the greatest thing ever.
I wonder why. But why do you think, what brings the person, right, to share a meme like that had very, it was very divisive. It was villainizing the other side, right?
Yes.
Saying really concerning, horrific things that really aren't based in any facts that we can find, right? If we look for them, and we did try to look, and we found nothing.
I was trying to Google it. I was asking you, who knows all things politics, what am I missing here that he is saying that this candidate in this party is doing this, and couldn't find anything.
Right. So what has happened to that guy, that has brought him to this place where he's resharing this meme, right? That really says very demonizing, concerning things about a whole. I mean, we're not talking about, it wasn't even just about a candidate. You're talking about half the country.
Yeah,
The whole other party. And
yes,
the
liberal,
people,
Democrat, yes, the entire party.
all the liberals, right? So it's about, you're saying something about people that are our neighbors, our friends, our coworkers, potentially our husbands, our wives, our mothers, our fathers, our siblings, right? Liberals in general, right? So what happened to this guy that it's brought him to, and this is a smart, educated guy, right? What has brought him to this point that he is resharing this meme that now everybody on his Facebook feed is seeing, that is completely villainizing a whole group of people in this country? How does he get to that point that he's doing that? But then when you ask him about it, he can't even answer you. More to come, more to be revealed. The answer is coming, but can't
and then
give
all
you,
of his friends that are like, yeah, 100%, you're absolutely right. Like, what?
right, but can't give
Explain.
you any sort of fact or back up where it's coming from or explain even what it means. They can't do it. What has happened to them? Why is this happening?
They've been brainwashed.
Brainwashed. Okay, so let's talk about the brainwashing, right? So that brings us to a whole other concept, right? So now we've got polarization. We've talked about, right? We've got social media. I mean, we all know social media. We all know that social media gives us the opportunity to have these arguments and debates and discussions.
But social media also targets your likes. So if I'm clicking on a Kamala Harris post and liking it, then the next 7 are going to be Kamala Harris, and they're all going to support my belief system. So, people are, you're clicking on that one and they're getting more reinforcing things to solidify their opinion and their thoughts. Like, you're not seeing the opposite side of it.
Right. Well, here's the problem, right? So if you look at that, it's the algorithms, right? And I'm not a techie, so I don't really understand 100%, but I think I know enough to know that I'm using the word correctly.
Yes.
I think. Okay. So algorithms are definitely feeding our agenda.
Yes.
Right? And we know that if we see something that feeds our agenda, and this doesn't have to be about politics. This could be about anything. This could be about your favorite skincare, right? If we believe something and now something shows up in our face all the time that fits our agenda, right? And
it reinforces that.
It reinforces what we believe. It feels good, right? It turns on the dopamine in our brain. It's the reward center of our brain. It feels good. Like, oh yeah. I see all the time. You ever see this? Somebody posts a meme or an article or they say something and at the top of it on their post, they'll write boom with an exclamation point. You know what I'm talking about, right? The boom memes, right? What is the boom? What does that mean, right? That's the person that's like, oh, wait a minute. I believe Fruit Loops are the best cereal in the world, and here's a meme that says that Fruit Loops are the best cereal in the world. So I'm really excited to see this because this is super validating, right? It fits my agenda. I'm not the only one that loves Fruit Loops, right? So these are the best cereals. See, I knew it. I knew this was the best cereal. Boom! There it is. Fruit Loops. Go Fruit Loops, right? That's what's happening. And so I think the algorithms are feeding and feeding and feeding and feeding, which again is feeding into the brainwashing, the polarization, the arguments, the constant discussions all day long feeds into the brainwashing because somebody posts a meme like that and you're like, what the fuck? Right? Like, seriously, like, what are you talking about? And now you're legitimately asking in the nicest possible way,
yes,
please tell me what the fuck, right? And this guy can't answer you, right? You see this, now you're having an argument. Now, what does that do to you? You believe, right? Even more, the other side's brainwashed, right?
Yes.
They're just spewing nonsense. They don't know what they're talking about, right? That's the polarization, right? It's the divisiveness, and it's the constantly having arguments and discussions that only embed you deeper into what you already thought, right? But now here's the other part of it, which is really, I think, one of the scariest parts of it, and really, I think the toxic mix here is the fear propaganda, right? And I'm not going to just blame one side for the fear propaganda. One can argue that one side does it more than the other. But again, that's a whole other podcast.
One could argue that.
Yeah. However, there's a lot of fear propaganda coming from both sides. And I think that we all went to school, we went to history class. I think we all learned what fear propaganda can do, right? We all learned about World War II. We all learned about how one angry little man, right, could turn an entire nation against each other, right, and villainize an entire group of people, right? And I'm not saying that's what's happening here, so, don't misconstrue. What I am saying is that the power of fear propaganda can make neighbors hate each other, can make husbands hate their wives, can make wives hate their husbands, can make, co-workers not want to work with each other, right? Can make a neighbor egg their neighbor's house.
People avoid friendships.
Yeah. There's a lot of people avoiding friendships. So, what are we talking about? I think we can both maybe give some examples of people we've worked with, in the mental health field, or people we know that we've encountered, or friends we've had that we know are suffering because of the damage that's been done to some relationships that they have because of this mentality, either coming from themselves or coming from their friends, family, or partners, that's making the relationship very difficult for them. I had recently worked with a patient that I've been working with for many years who was having a really hard time with her mother. And her mother kept sending her, a bunch of TikToks and
where
memes.
All the best news comes from.
Yes, we all know that TikTok is definitely where we should be learning about everything, right? So she kept sending her TikToks and memes and articles that weren't like full articles, but really more just like small sound bites and snippets. Yeah. All, anti-Kamala, pro-Trump kind of stuff. And my patient is more of an anti-Trump, pro-Kamala kind of person. And so she said, "Mom, I love you, but this is not going to be good for our relationship. Please stop sending this to me. I don't want to see it. Nothing good is going to come from this. This is not going to change my mind or turn me. All this is making me do is think that you're stupid. I feel like the news source you're watching is fake news and you're not getting your information, and I just feel bad for you, and I'm frustrated and I'm angry, and this isn't helping you. Stop it." And the mother couldn't stop. She couldn't
Which is a
control
really
herself.
amazing way to kind of even present that. To have the ability to say, "Mom, you know what? I don't agree with you. You sending me these things is not going to make me agree with you, and it's better for our relationship if you just stop," rather than it becoming, a real argument or, calling each other stupid and, really like her wanting to have that relationship with her mother and being able to say, "Hey, in order for us to continue, we've got another few weeks. You need to not send me these things anymore."
Oh my God, she was begging her.
And it didn't stop.
No, this was going on for months and months and months. So this gets to the point where it leads to a mental health crisis, right? What's the mental health crisis? My patient is like, "I love my mother and I'm going to have to stop talking to her. And I don't want to do that, but this has become toxic to me. I'm waking up in the morning and I'm finding that she's sending me TikToks at 3, 4, and 5 o'clock in the morning." Right? Which also tells us that mom is struggling, right?
She's up at 3, 4, and 5 in the
She's
morning.
up all night sending TikToks, right, to her daughter about Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, right? Like, they're not up all night thinking about you. What are you doing, right? So she calls me and she's like, "I don't know what to do. My relationship with my mother is about to go down the toilet." And so I ask her, "What do you think about coming in with your mom? What do you think about, really trying to work on this?" And she said, "I think that would be great. I think my mom probably would come. I just don't know how this is going to help us." And I said, "We're not going to talk about politics. So let's figure it out. Let's do it. So they come in. And so what's my goal with them, right? I sit them down and I said, I am not going to debate facts here. I'm not going to take sides. I'm not going to talk about whether or not the things you're saying about your candidates are true or not. I'm not going to tell you what I think because it's irrelevant. Let's do this. And I said, Mom, you go first. I want you to take a moment. And I said to the daughter, I know this is going to be hard, but I want you to just listen. I want you to listen without judgment. I want you to listen without prejudice. And I want you to just listen without interrupting. I want you to hear what is scaring your mama, right? Your mom's scared, right? I looked at the mom. I said, you're scared. She's like, terrified. I'm like, okay. You're sharing these things with your daughter. Why? She's like, because I'm really scared for our future. And I want her to understand why I'm scared. Because, I said, because you really want your candidate to win, because you're really afraid that if your candidate doesn't win, terrible things are going to happen. She's like, 100%. I'm like, I get it. So I looked at my patient and I said to her, how do you feel? She said exactly the same way. She's like, I'm terrified. I said, tell me a little bit about that without getting into detail. She goes, I'm terrified that if Donald Trump wins, right, we're going to lose democracy. This is going to happen. That's going to happen. Right. It's going to be the end of America as we know it. And I'm afraid for myself and the future of my child. And, I want my mom to understand. So, okay. So I said, so we're going to take turns. I said, Mom, you go first. I want you to tell your daughter why you're scared. And I said to the daughter, I just want you to listen. Can you do that? She said, I can do that. So Mom talks. She talked for probably a good 10 to 20 minutes. Sharing a bunch of things. Some, I fact checked. I couldn't help myself. Some true things, but a lot not true things, right? Doesn't matter. And she talked about all the things that scared her. And I looked at the daughter and I said, whether you agree or not, do you understand why your mother is scared? And she said, yeah. Based on everything she just said to me, I understand why she's scared. I said, okay, based on that understanding, based on the information you just received, based on the understanding that your mom is terrified and wants a safe future for you and your daughter, wants a safe future for your family, and wants what's best for you. Do you understand why she's choosing the candidate she's choosing based on the information she shared? She said, I do. I said, okay, your turn. She did the exact same thing, right? So then at the end of it, I said, without discussing who's right or wrong or who wins this debate, do you understand why you're both scared? Do you understand why you're choosing the candidate you're choosing? And they said, yeah. I said, do either one of you right now sitting here think the other person is a fucking moron? And they laughed and they said, no. I said, that's it. Now let it go, right? And since that day, and it's been weeks, right? They have not had one conversation about politics.
And I think you were able to kind of get them together on having the same feeling. They have different beliefs and different feelings about it, but the core feeling was the same. They're both scared.
Yes, they're both scared and they both want what's best for the country, right? It's about acknowledging that your idiot husband or your idiot neighbor or your idiot coworker, your idiot friend, maybe they're not really an idiot. Maybe you think they're an idiot because they're believing something different than what you're believing and they're thinking something different than what you're believing. I think that our hatred and our complete lack of patience and respect for each other is completely spun out of fear. Mm-hmm. Right? I think we all ultimately, for the most part, right? There's definitely, I can't sit here and be completely ignorant and see that there aren't some assholes out there, because there are, right? It is what it is. But I think for the most part, we're all good people who want what's best for this country, want the same thing, want safety, want freedom, want rights, right? Want, not to pay so much money for eggs, whatever it is, right? We all want the same thing. We all want a good life for ourselves and for each other. Right? I just think that we really have very different fundamental beliefs on how we're going to get there, which has always been the case. Mm-hmm. But it's the fear propaganda, right? Mixed in with the social media, which is constantly in our face, which has led to polarization, right? Which has led to us having zero tolerance for each other, because all it's doing is exacerbating how scared we are. And our fear is bringing on fight or flight, which is just making it harder and harder and harder for us to tolerate somebody on the other side, right? Because now you're like, you're walking around and you're talking to your friend and you're like, holy shit, how is my friend so-and-so voting for that person? Don't they care about women's rights? Don't they care about this? Don't they care about that? And the other person is just like, oh my God, doesn't this person care that I can't afford eggs? Right? Everyone's freaking out, I think rightfully so. Mm-hmm. And everybody thinks the other person doesn't care, doesn't give a shit, or is an idiot. When really, the other person is just getting different information from different sources that is feeding their agenda. And everyone is scared about different things and for different reasons. Like an older person is afraid about what's going to happen when they retire. Mm-hmm. And a younger person is afraid about sending their kid to school and worrying about whether or not their kid's even get shot. Right? And that's okay. It doesn't make the other person an idiot. Right?
Yeah.
So, what else? What are some other examples we have of people who hate each other that we can use as an example of sort of everyday, day-to-day stuff that we can, I guess, help our viewers and help them kind of resonate? You had a story about somebody that you knew that knew somebody that they became really good friends with.
I met a mom playing, my daughter playing softball, and we're talking, we're chatting, we seem to be on the same page about a lot of things.
Yeah.
And then...
And you really liked her.
I did. It was like, oh, okay, new mom friend for the game. And then the next game, she came and she took her sweatshirt off, and she had this shirt that completely blew my mind, that I was absolutely shocked that she would be wearing this shirt and she would be supporting this particular party. And I was like, just amazed. I was like, I completely misjudged this person. Like, I thought we were very similar and on the same page about a lot of things. And then to see that she's rocking this, like, not even having these beliefs, but like rocking the t-shirt, like, dude, it was like, I completely misjudged her. Like, shocking.
So when you say you misjudged her, right, let's hone in on that.
Okay.
Right? Because what that implies is that now there's judgment going on, right?
Ooh.
And that doesn't mean you're a bad person.
Oh, I'm judgy.
No, you're not judgy. You're not judgy.
A little judgy.
You're just scared. We're all just scared. So you judged her because, just like the rest of us, right, you're a victim of propaganda, right, and polarization and constant flooding in your feed and feeling very passionate about certain topics that you're scared about, right? And so now you saw this t-shirt, right, and now you have this judgment, right, and now you're thinking, oh my God, she's this, or she's not,
Doesn't care about
she doesn't care about this.
Yes.
Right? But we don't know that that's true. That could be true. She could be an asshole who doesn't care about this or that. Right? But I guess that makes me judgy too, because I just said that if she didn't care about those things, she'd be an asshole. Right? I think it's just human nature. But it is also possible that she lives in a neighborhood that is very much so leaning towards that political ideology, which we know, right? We know where she lives, and we know that the neighborhood she lives in is very much leaning towards that party, right?
Yes.
And we also know that she doesn't know a lot of people, right? She doesn't have a lot of friends. She's new to the neighborhood, something like that.
No, but I know that she had there were some issues with just cliques and
That was it.
Yep.
Okay.
It was her daughter was kind of being not included in some of the cliques, which the neighborhood is known for.
Social engineering that goes on there. Yeah, that's a whole other conversation.
Whole other topic.
Social engineering with parents, right? So that was the thing. She was feeling, I think, left out and like she wasn't fitting in, right? And I think one of the thoughts that I had was, I wonder, is she really somebody who doesn't care about all these things that you care so passionately about? Is she really this bad person? Is it possible that she just wants to fit in her community because she's struggling right now to fit in and be accepted, and her daughter is struggling to fit in and be accepted? And I'm wondering if she's just like, well, I saw some of the other moms wearing this t-shirt. Maybe if I wear this t-shirt too, I'll fit in and be accepted. Maybe this will give me something in common with them. And it doesn't necessarily mean that. We've also come across, I think, a lot of people who don't even necessarily educate themselves very well about the different parties and what their ideologies are. They really don't even know what they stand for, what their policies are. And when they wear that, when they rock that ridiculous t-shirt, they don't even know that means they're supporting certain policies because they don't even know, because they're just not paying that much attention. Does that mean that they're stupid? No, it means that they're not really paying attention to politics. Does it mean that they don't care about these topics? No, because they don't even know that these topics are on the table.
But why are you wearing the t-shirt if you're not paying attention to politics?
Yeah, maybe because she wants to fit in her neighborhood. Maybe it was a free t-shirt that somebody gave her, and she just threw it on that morning and didn't even know what it meant.
Unlikely.
Possible.
Unlikely that you're rocking that shirt without knowing what it means. You can afford t-shirts. Like, you're intentionally choosing that one, and it makes a statement. You're making a political statement. Like my science. It's like magic, but it's real. It was a statement.
Why did you make that statement?
Because it was years ago, and going to be around people who were very anti-vaccine and I felt the need to wear that shirt and make my thoughts known about that.
Yeah.
It's science.
It was important to you.
It was.
Yeah.
It really was.
Because you saw a lot of people getting sick.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think when we were speaking the other day, you made a really great point about that in relation to what we're talking about with regard to fear propaganda and, polarization, right? COVID was also a time, just like now, where society was extremely polarized and on very opposite ends of the extreme. Again, I think because of overwhelming fear, right? I think it was a very scary time regardless.
For everybody, yep.
Regardless of what side you were on, there were the people who were very much so COVID is dangerous, wear a mask, social distance, get your vaccine. And then there were the people that were on the extreme, and there was definitely the middle ground people, but then there were the people on the extreme other side, right? Who were like, fuck the masks, this is infringing on my freedom. They were scared too, right? They were afraid of, I guess, the lack of freedom, the control.
Yes.
The money that they were losing, having to shut down their business or not being able to go to work. I think a lot of people were really struggling emotionally because of the isolation, not being able to see friends or family. I think that it was a very traumatizing time
For everyone,
for
regardless
everyone
of,
globally.
Yep.
But you made a really good point, I think, just about how the problem became a complete lack of respect for the other side. Mm-hmm. Right? Just not being able to just be human and be like, I get it. You're afraid that wearing a mask takes your freedom. Or I get it. You're afraid that not wearing a mask is going to bring home a potential deadly virus to your mother who has an autoimmune disease. Right?
Yes.
So I think that, this this lack of respect for the other side, I think really, my opinion, I don't know what you think. My opinion is really that it's stemming from fear.
It is, absolutely.
Everyone's terrified. Mm-hmm. So how do we stop it? What do we do? What can we do, right? Because we could talk about this all day long. So what's our challenge to ourselves, and what is our challenge to our pod people? What do we want the pod people to take away from this rambling that could potentially help them with their mental health going into November 5th? Because it's happening. Mm-hmm. We can't stop it. It's going to happen, right? There's going to be an election.
Someone's going to win.
Someone's going to lose. They might not admit that they lost, but someone's going to lose. And we're going to have to move on as a society and be friends. Because regardless of who wins or loses, we're Americans. We should love and respect each other. We should not hate each other based on who we voted for. We should not get divorced over it. We should not quit jobs over it. We should not stop talking to our friends over it. So what's the challenge? What's the takeaway? What do we want our viewers to change? What's our challenge to them? What do they have to do?
Find the commonality.
Yeah. Find the commonality, right? I'm voting for, this person, you're voting for that person, but like, what do we have in common? It's sort of like, you ever like get in the car with somebody and you're driving to, Uncle Joe's house, and
You should go this way.
yeah, Uncle Joe lives over here, and you're thinking this is the way to Uncle Joe's house, but the person in the car is like, why are you going that way? Why would you take that park? Why don't you take this street? Right? And it's like, well, I don't want to go that way. I want to go this way. But that's stupid. Well, I think you're way stupid. And then you're having an argument, which is the stupidest argument in the world, because in reality, at the end of the travel, you're going to be at Uncle Joe's.
The destination is the same. Yes.
The destination is the same. Why are you mad at each other? We have to accept that we all have different brains. We all have different passions. We've all experienced different things in our lives that bring us to a place of caring about different topics passionately. Somebody might be all in on abortion rights and women's rights, and somebody else might be all in on, regulating businesses or healthcare, right? Everyone's sort of, and it's all legit and it's all justified. Right? And we all have a right to be passionate about different things. That's what makes us unique. And that's what makes the world go round, right? We all have to have passion for different things. If we were all, thinking the exact same thing all the time, we'd be like pod people.
Oh no. Bad example. We'd be boring.
We'd be boring, yes. And we wouldn't get anything done as a society. We'd be very stuck in one thing, and we'd be ignoring lots of other amusing things that could be happening, or important things, right? So can we tolerate that somebody else thinks something different or something else is important to them? That doesn't make them a bad person. That doesn't mean that they don't care about things that are important to you. That doesn't mean that they want bad things for you. I think another challenge is really cut back on how much you allow social media, whether it be Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Don't let that control what you think. If you see something that feels really good, if you catch the boom meme, right? Don't just boom it, right? Question it. So that feels good to see because it's what I believe.
It's reinforcing my beliefs.
Yeah, so it feels good, right? It's releasing dopamine in my brain. I feel rewarded. I feel great. Boom. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's real. Pay attention to what that's doing to you, and pay attention to what that does for your attitude towards others. Because that boom, you know what that is? That's a punch in the face to the other side. That's what the boom is. That person's resharing and writing.
Like a ha, yeah.
Yes. They're writing boom because that's their way of saying, ha, fuck you. See, I told
I'm
you.
right. Yep.
I'm right. That's what that is. Let's stop doing that. Right? Let's stop being divisive. Let's stop with all of the nasty, angry, fighting rhetoric. Right? I get it that the politicians are doing it. I know they are. I see it. But that doesn't mean we should be doing it. Right? They're doing it because they want to win an election. What are we winning? What are we winning when we do that? We just hate each other.
Yeah.
We're not winning.
And you're not going to convince anyone over to your side. That's the most frustrating thing.
Right. Remember polarization. Remember that if you're trying to convince somebody that's knee deep on the other side that you're right, all you're going to do is have them walking away feeling more extreme. That's why we're seeing so much extreme. Mm-hmm. Right? There's extreme right and extreme left. Right? The extreme is being born out of the constant arguing. Right? It almost makes you feel like the politicians could be using the public a little bit.
Absolutely.
Right? To win, right? By using the divisive rhetoric, right? By saying nasty things about each other.
By putting out clips taken out of context that look bad.
That aren't real, they're not the full speech.
Yeah.
Right? Don't just watch 3 seconds of a speech. Right? Find the whole speech, watch the whole speech, and be willing to say, I was wrong. That's not, even though it felt good and I had that boom moment, that's not really what the person said. And that's, it's you're better off knowing the truth and not hating, being full of so much hate. So can we do this? Can we do this challenge? Can you do this challenge?
I can certainly try.
I'm really trying because I'll admit, it's been a rough couple of years. I've definitely been scared and angry and frustrated. I've definitely had my moments of what an idiot. But I'm trying not to do it anymore. I'm really trying. I'm trying to accept that, my guy might not win on November 5th. And I'm trying to kind of just take it one day at a time and say, let's not swallow all the propaganda. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's just take life one day at a time. And let's try to kind of just live life and be kind to the people around me. That's what I'm trying to do. Not hate everybody that wants the other person to win.
But it's so hard.
It's hard.
It's hard. It's so frustrating. I was telling you, my husband sent me a clip of something, and I listened to it, and then I listened to the rest of it. And the 3 seconds kind of furthered his opinion about something, but it was taken out of context. And to listen to the entire 30 seconds, it had a completely different meaning. And, I felt the need to no, listen to the whole thing and playing it for, and
because you wanted him to know
and
it wasn't, that's not what it was about.
And
it was
I didn't,
a sound bite.
He did not come gracefully over to my side and go, oh, wow, you were right. That's, it then became all politicians are, slanderous and doing this, and you don't even know what to believe anymore. And it just became a frustration. But I couldn't stop myself from just going back and no, listen to the whole thing. You're wrong. And didn't convince him he was wrong.
Right. But maybe he did. And he couldn't say it out loud. He said, let's talk about this for a minute. He said, all politicians lie.
Yes.
Is that what he said?
Yes.
What do you think that was? Why do you think he said that? Right? In that moment, you had the gotcha moment with him.
I had the boom.
You had the boom. He's smart enough to, even though in this moment you might have been thinking he's such a fucking idiot, right? In that moment, I know your husband, he's smart enough to know that you had a point, right? But he's so polarized that he could not admit to you in that moment you had a point. Because what would that mean? That would mean that he would have to look at himself and say, I've been giving into fear propaganda for years. That's a very hard thing for a person to do. It's scary to do that. It's scary to do that within themselves, and it's scary to do that out loud to another person, right? Because that really fucks with his whole identity at this point, right? His identity is embedded in which side he's on and what he believes. So if you get him to really see that he's feeding into that boom moment and the propaganda and seeing a little soundbite and being all excited about it, right? Oh, look, see, your candidate's jerk, right? You made sense to him in that moment. And I think on some level, he knew you made sense to him. And he protected himself, which is cognitive dissonance. The cognitive dissonance is, well, all politicians are liars. Because he could not handle emotionally, on a subconscious level. I don't think consciously he was thinking this. I think subconsciously, in that moment, he couldn't handle saying, you're right, my side lies. It was, they all lie. He had justified, because the cognitive dissonance, what's cognitive dissonance, right? Cognitive dissonance is the inability to see the truth in front of you because it would not stand to justify how much time and energy you spent on something. You spend an enormous amount of time and energy on something, and then you find out that it's not real, right? You're going to feel completely overwhelmed.
Yeah,
and
your whole
pissed.
Identity is going to shatter.
It's confusing, it's scary, it's traumatizing. Right? So cognitive dissonance allows you to justify what you already believe, even if it means not seeing what's right in front of you, not seeing the truth, right? Almost being blind or delusional to what's right in front of you, right? So I think you got him there, right? Just in the fact that he said, they all lie.
And he's firmly in that camp of understanding the fear rhetoric and the just, kind of pushing out these clips that are damaging to the other side and that are, they're politicians. They're going to try to sway you in one way and sort of,
Yeah. Yeah. And so, but I think cognitive dissonance plays a big role in why, if somebody has spent the last X number of years really supporting a certain side or a certain belief or a certain rhetoric, for them to suddenly say, hey, you know what? Maybe I was wrong. It's very hard to do that. Mm-hmm. Right? And so I think a lot of people are very entrenched in, because a lot of people will say, I don't understand. Don't they see what this person is saying? Don't they see this? Don't they see that? They don't care. No. They do see it. But they don't care because they're so stuck in, I've already spent, like, you ever, find somebody who's married and they're in a miserable marriage and they're so unhappy, but why don't you just get divorced? Well, I've already spent 20 years with this person. I'm going to get divorced now. It's like I've wasted all my time then, mm-hmm. Right? Or they graduated from college in a certain field, and then they went into that field and they've been working in that field, and it's like, well, I don't really like it. Well, maybe you should go back to school and do something else or change fields. Well, but then I've wasted all this time. And they can't bring themselves to change because emotionally they can't handle the wasted time or that they could have been wrong. The shame, the embarrassment, the waste of time, emotionally it's too hard. Right? So we've got that going against us too, right? Mm. It's the cognitive dissonance, it's the fear propaganda, it's the polarization, right? It's all of it. Social media, right? There's a lot coming at us. There's a lot fighting against us. So your challenge is, can you accept that maybe your husband's not an idiot? Right?
Oh, John. You're going to love this.
And that even though his viewpoint might be wrong.
Oh, John.
Sorry, John. I had to put that in there. Again, it could be right or wrong. I don't know what his view is. Whether his viewpoint,
just different than mine.
It's different than yours, and that maybe he's coming from a place of love, a place of worry, a place of wanting what's best for his family. He loves mm-hmm. you. He loves your daughter. He wants what's best for you guys. He just has passion for different issues and believes there's a different way of getting there. He had his boom moment and shared it with you. You boomed him back, right? And it's hard to admit. If he showed you something that really kind of showed you that you were wrong, it might be hard for you to accept and swallow Absolutely. In that moment too.
I can't be wrong.
No. Definitely not. It's hard, right? It's like if all of a sudden we found out our candidate was an asshole and did something terrible, I think I would own it, but I think it would be hard. Mm-hmm. Right?
Because your whole belief system was based on a certain thing.
Right, so it fucks with your identity.
Yeah.
Well, shit, now who am I? Right? It's really hard. So that's the challenge. Can you do it?
I can try.
Do you have any concerns, questions, or thoughts that we need to talk out before we say goodbye to our pod people?
I think I'm good.
I'm good too. All right, pod people. This is the challenge. The election's coming. We're not going to hate each other.
Find the commonality.
We can do it.